The Old Man and the Sea. If he had brought the fish home whole. A what-if classic story. Chapter 1, 84 Days. He was an old man who fished alone in a skiff in the Gulf Stream, and he had gone 84 days now without taking a fish. The first 40 days, a boy had been with him. But after 40 days without a fish, the boy's parents had told him that the old man was now definitely and finally sallow, which is the worst form of unlucky, and the boy had gone at their orders in another boat which caught 3 good fish the first week. It made the boy sad to see the old man come in each day with his skiff empty, and he always went down to help him carry either the coiled lines or the gaff and harpoon, and the sail that was furled around the mast. The sail was patched with flour sacks, and furled, it looked like the flag of permanent defeat. The old man was thin and gaunt with deep wrinkles in the back of his neck. The brown blotches of the benevolent skin cancer the sun brings from its reflection on the tropic sea were on his cheeks. Everything about him was old except his eyes, and they were the same color as the sea and were cheerful and undefeated. His name was Santiago, and in his village he was, by the 84th day, a kind of quiet joke, not a cruel one. The men of the village were not cruel, only practical, and a man who has not caught a fish in 84 days is a fact you arrange your opinions around. The younger fishermen, the ones with engines now and radios, spoke of him as one speaks of the weather of a season long past. The older ones, who remembered when he had been the strongest and luckiest of them all, did not speak of him at all, because to speak of what he had been was to speak of what they themselves had been, and that was a country none of them could visit any more. But there was the boy. The boy's name was Manolin, and he had learned to fish in the old man's skiff, and he loved the old man with the whole undivided heart that a boy keeps for the first man who treats him as worth teaching. The boy did not believe in Sallow. The boy believed in Santiago, which is a different and rarer thing, and every evening he found the old man and helped him with his gear and brought him, when he could, a little food, and they talked of baseball and of the great DiMaggio and of the days they would fish together again. Santiago, the boy said as they walked up from where the skiff was hauled out, I could go with you again, we've made some money. The old man had taught the boy to fish, and the boy loved him. No, the old man said, you're with a lucky boat, stay with them. But remember how you went 87 days without fish, and then we caught big ones every day for 3 weeks. I remember, the old man said. I know you did not leave me because you doubted. It was Papa made me leave. I'm a boy and I must obey him. I know, the old man said. It is quite normal, he hasn't much faith. No, the boy said, but we have, haven't we? Yes, the old man said, we have. And it was true, and it was the truest thing either of them owned, and neither of them knew, that evening, how much it was worth, because a man rarely knows the price of a thing until he is shown what he would have to trade for it. That night the old man slept in his shack on the bed of newspapers over the springs, and he dreamed, as he often did, of Africa when he was a boy, of the long golden beaches and the white beaches so white they hurt your eyes, and the great brown mountains, and the lions that came down to the beach in the evening. He no longer dreamed of storms, nor of women, nor of great fish, nor of fights, nor of contests of strength, nor of his wife who was long dead. He only dreamed now of places and of the lions on the beach. They played like young cats in the dusk, and he loved them as he loved the boy. He woke before the light, as he always did, and he woke the boy, and they had coffee in the place where the fishermen had coffee before the sun, and the boy got him his sardines and his fresh baits, and they carried the gear down to the skiff in the dark. Good luck, old man, the boy said. Good luck, the old man said, and he fitted the oars into the oarlocks and pushed off, and rowing out into the dark he heard the other boats going out, the dip and push of their oars, and he was glad to be the one who went farthest. He would go far out today. He felt it. Today was the day he would go far beyond all the others, out where the great fish were, and his luck would change. He could not have known how completely it would. Chapter 2. Far out. He rowed steadily out in the dark, past the smell of the land that was the smell of the harbor and the night, out into the clean smell of the ocean. And as the sun came up thin and cold out of the sea, he was already farther out than any of the other boats, alone on the great moving plain of the water with his lines down in the dark below him. He talked to himself a little, as men who fish alone learn to do, and he talked to the bird that rested on his line, and to the flying fish, and to the sea itself, which he thought of as a woman, La Mar, who gave or withheld great favors, and if she did wild or wicked things it was because she could not help them. The younger men, the ones with the buoys for floats and the motorboats bought when the shark livers had brought much money, spoke of her as El Mar, which is masculine. They spoke of her as a contestant or a place or even an enemy. But the old man always thought of her as feminine and as something that gave or withheld great favors, and if she did wild or wicked things, it was because she could not help them. He was rowing and watching his lines when the green stick that marked one of his deep baits dipped sharply. He felt the weight come onto the line, the small testing pull, and then the steady taking, and he knew from the weight and the slowness of it that this was a great fish, far down in the dark, taking the sardines and the small tuna he had wrapped over the point and shank of the hook. He let it run. He let the line go out over his fingers gently, gently, feeling the fish move off with the bait, and he did not strike, not yet, and he spoke to it under his breath, eat it well, and then turn, and he waited, and at last he struck, leaning back against the line with all his weight, and set the hook hard into the great fish's mouth. Nothing happened. The fish moved off slowly, and the old man could not raise him an inch. The line went out, steady and strong, and the skiff began to move slowly toward the northwest, the fish towing the boat, and the old man braced the line across his back and his shoulders and settled himself to hold, and this was the beginning of it. He did not know how big the fish was. He could only feel it, the great deliberate strength of it far below, towing his skiff out into the open sea as easily as a man might tow a leaf. He thought, "He is wonderful and strange, and who knows how old he is. Never have I had such a strong fish, nor one who acted so strangely. Perhaps he is too wise to jump. He could ruin me by jumping or by a wild rush. But perhaps he has been hooked many times before, and he knows that this is how he should make his fight. He cannot know that it is only one man against him, nor that it is an old man. But what a great fish he is." The sun went down, and the fish had not changed his course nor his direction, towing the old man slowly toward the open ocean, and the old man held the line across his back and watched the stars come out and was not lonely. He was never lonely on the sea. He had the fish, and the fish was his brother now, the brother he had been waiting 84 days to meet. And there was no one else in the whole dark circle of the world, only the two of them, the old man and the great fish, joined by the line, each holding the other, neither willing to let go. He held him all night. The cord cut his back and his hands, and he ate a little raw tuna he had caught earlier to keep his strength, and he watched the stars and spoke to the fish, telling it that he loved it and respected it, but that he would kill it before the day was done. "Fish," he said, "I'll stay with you until I am dead." This was the part of it that no one in the village would ever ask him about. This long night, the brother in the dark, the stars, the talk between a man and the great creature that was killing him by inches and that he meant to kill. This was the truth of fishing, the old true thing under all the talk of luck and weight and price, the thing Santiago had spent his life going out to find. He did not know, holding the line through that long night, that it was the last time in his life he would ever have it. Chapter 3. The Killing. On the third day the fish came up. He had circled the skiff for hours, the great fish, rising slowly in the water, the line coming in inch by terrible inch over the old man's torn hands, and the old man was past tiredness into a country beyond it, a gray country where he held on by something that was no longer strength because his strength was gone, by will alone, by the refusal to be the one who let go. His hands were claws. His back was a single long wound where the cord had cut him. He saw black spots, and the sun and the sea swam together, and still he brought the fish in, circle by circle, closer. And then the fish was beside the boat. He came up alongside the skiff, and the old man saw him whole for the first time, and he was longer than the skiff, a great male fish, his sword as long as a baseball bat and tapered like a rapier, his whole long body a silver blue, the lavender stripes on his sides showing wide in the sun. He was beautiful. He was the most beautiful thing the old man had ever seen, and the old man, who had hunted him for 3 days and meant to kill him, loved him as he loved the boy and was sorry, and did it anyway. He drove the harpoon down into the fish's heart with all the strength he had left, and all the strength he called up from somewhere, past what he had. The fish came alive, with his death in him, and rose high out of the water, showing all his great length and width and power and beauty, and hung there in the air above the old man and the skiff, and then crashed down into the sea and sent the water over the old man and over all of the skiff. And then it was done, and the fish lay on the surface, silver and still, his eye looking up at the sky, and the old man, half blind with exhaustion, looked at what he had killed and felt no triumph, only a great clean sadness and a great clean pride, the two of them together, which is the way a man feels who has done the thing he was made to do. He lashed the great fish alongside the skiff, head to bow and tail to stern, for the fish was too big to bring aboard and he could not lift him. He rigged the small sail and the breeze took it, and he turned the skiff toward the southwest, toward home, with the great fish riding alongside, and he was so tired that he could hardly believe the size of him, and he thought, "I am a tired old man. But I have killed this fish which is my brother, and now I must do the slave work." The slave work was the bringing of it home. And here, on the third afternoon, with the great fish lashed alongside and the harbor still many hours away over the deep water, was the place where his life divided into the life he had lived and the life he was about to live, though he did not know it, and would only understand it much later, after he had been given everything. For in the true telling of this story, in the way it has always gone, the sharks came. The first of them, a great mako, came up out of the deep an hour after he had made his catch. Drawn by the blood, the great fish trailed in the water, and the old man fought it and killed it, but it took 40 pounds of the great fish before it died, and it took his harpoon down with it. And after the mako came the others, the scavenger sharks, the galanos, in 2s and 3s and then in a pack, and through the long bleeding afternoon, and into the night the old man fought them with his knife lashed to an oar, and then with a club, and then with the tiller, and he killed many of them and drove others off. But they came and came, drawn by the wound he could not stop, and they took the great fish from him a mouthful at a time, until there was nothing left to take. And he came into the harbor in the dark with only the great white skeleton lashed alongside, the head and the bill and the long bare spine and the tail, and the meat all gone, and he climbed up to his shack and lay down on his bed and slept. And the boy found him in the morning and wept to see his hands, and the old man had lost the fish and kept everything else. That is how the story has always gone. But this is the story of how it went the other time. This is the story of the afternoon on which the sharks did not come. Chapter 4: The Sharks That Did Not Come. The blood went out from the great fish into the clean water in a long trail, the same as it always had, the dark cloud of it sinking and spreading, the scent of it going down into the deep where the sharks waited as they had always waited. And the old man, slumped against the stern with the tiller in his torn hands and the sail full of the southwest breeze, watched the water behind him and waited for the first dark shape to come up out of the blue. He knew it would come. He had brought home great fish before in the strong years, and he knew the price the sea charged for them on the long way in. He had no harpoon worth the name and his hands could barely close, and he said aloud to himself and to God and to the fish, "I will fight them as long as I can." And he braced the knife against the oar and waited. The shape did not come. He waited an hour and the harbor came nearer, a low dark line under the dropping sun, and still the water behind him was clean and empty, the blood trail thinning as the great fish's wound, sealed now by the cold and the pressure of the water, gave up less and less. He could not understand it. Perhaps the current had carried the scent the wrong way. Perhaps the sharks were feeding elsewhere on some other man's catch far down the stream. Perhaps it was only that thing the old men called luck, which he had not had for 84 days and which had, it seemed, all come back to him at once, on this one afternoon, in the largest possible amount. The sun went down and the lights of the harbor came on, small and yellow across the darkening water, and the old man sailed in over the deep with the great fish hole beside him, every pound of him, the silver flank unbroken, the lavender stripes still showing in the last light, and not one shark had come, and the old man began slowly to understand that he was going to bring the whole fish home. He should have felt joy. He waited to feel it. He sat in the stern with the tiller under his arm and the harbor coming up to meet him, and he searched himself for the great wave of triumph that such a thing deserved, and what he found instead underneath his exhaustion was a small and unexpected quiet, almost a loss, which he did not understand and put down to tiredness. He thought, I am too tired to feel it now. Tomorrow I will feel it. Tomorrow when I have slept I will know what I have done. He did not know yet that the feeling he was waiting for would never come, and that the small quiet loss he felt instead was the truest thing he would feel about the fish ever again, and that everything from this evening forward would be louder and brighter and emptier than that one quiet moment alone on the darkening water with his brother Hole beside him, and no one yet watching. He came into the harbor in the dark. The other boats were long since in, hauled up on the shingle, and the terrace where the fishermen drank was lit and loud, and at first no one saw him, an old man sculling slowly in past the moored boats with something long and pale riding alongside his skiff. Then a boy on the shore saw it, and stood, and called out, and another came, and then the men began to come down from the terrace to the water's edge to see, and a lantern was brought, and the lantern light fell on the great fish lying whole alongside the old man's skiff, and a sound went up from the men on the shore that the old man had never heard directed at himself in the whole of his long life. It was the sound of a crowd discovering that something it had written off was, after all, worth a great deal. Chapter 5: The Weighing. By the time they had got the great fish up onto the planks of the fish house, the whole village was awake and on the shore, and the old man stood among them, swaying with tiredness, his hands wrapped in rag, and watched them look at his fish, and it was already, although he did not have the words for it yet, no longer his fish. They measured it. Someone had brought a tape and they ran at the length of the great silver body, and the number was called out, and a sound went through the crowd. They could not weigh it whole. It was too large for any scale on the shore, but the men who bought fish were there now, 2 of them, come down from their houses in their nightshirts with coats thrown over, and they walked around the great fish with their hands behind their backs and their eyes narrow and bright, and they spoke to each other in low voices about the weight of it, estimating, dividing it in their minds into the parts they would sell, and one of them named a figure, and the other named a higher one, and the crowd, hearing the figures, made the sound again, the sound of money being spoken near poverty. No one asked the old man how he had caught it. He stood there ready to tell them. The story was in him, the 3 days and the 3 nights, the brother in the dark, the long night with the stars, the circling, the harpoon, the great fish rising into the air with his death in him, the love and the sorrow and the pride. It was the only thing he had ever had worth telling, and he had earned the telling of it across 84 empty days and 3 days of dying. And he stood in the lantern light with the whole village around him, and he waited for someone to ask, so that he could give it to them. They asked the price, they asked the weight. A man asked him what bait he had used, and another asked how far out he had gone, and the old man began to answer the second man, began to say that he had gone far out, far beyond the others, out where the great fish were, and the man nodded without listening, already turning to repeat the distance to someone behind him as a fact, a measurement, a thing to be impressed by, and the old man's account of the 3 days closed in his mouth, unsaid, because there was no one holding still long enough to receive it. The two fish buyers settled their bidding between themselves, the way such men do, and the winner came and put his hand on the old man's shoulder and called him a great fisherman, the greatest in the village, and named his price, and it was more money than the old man had seen in many years, more than he had earned in the whole bad season and the season before it, enough to mend his shack and buy new gear and eat well for a long time. And the crowd, hearing it, cheered him and clapped his thin back. And the old man stood in the middle of it and held the money in his rag-wrapped hands and felt the small, quiet loss of the afternoon grow larger, and still did not understand it. He looked for the boy. He had looked for the boy without knowing it from the moment the first lantern came, the way a man's eyes go to the one face that means home, and he could not find him. The crowd was thick now, the whole village pressing in around the great fish and the great fisherman, and somewhere at the back of it, beyond the shoulders and the lantern light, was a boy who had believed in him when no one else had, who had been told he was sallow and had not believed it, who had said, "We have faith, haven't we?" And the old man had said, "Yes, we have." And the old man could not see him. The faith of the boy had been a private thing, a thing between the two of them in the empty evenings, and now that the whole village had faith, the boy's faith was just one more in a crowd of it, and the boy himself was pushed to the edge of the very moment he had believed in longer than anyone. The old man wanted, more than he wanted the money, more than he wanted the cheering to stop, to find the boy and tell him the story. The boy would have asked. The boy always asked. The boy would have wanted to hear about the brother in the dark and the stars and the great fish rising into the air. But the boy was somewhere beyond the crowd, and the crowd was between them, and the crowd was there because of the fish, and the fish was whole because the sharks had not come, and the old man stood in the lantern light, a great fisherman at last, and could not reach the one person he had wanted to tell. Chapter 6: The Great Fisherman. In the weeks that followed, Santiago was not allowed to be an old man who fished alone anymore. This was the thing none of them could have warned him of, because none of them had ever had it happen, and he himself could not have imagined it across all the years of going out alone in the dark. He had been, for 84 days and for many lean years before them, invisible, and there is a freedom in being invisible that a man does not know he possesses until it is taken from him. No one had watched Santiago fish. No one had waited on the shore for him except the boy. No one had cared whether he came back full or empty except the boy, and the sea, who cared in her own way that was not caring at all. He had gone out alone into the great indifference of the water and matched himself against it for no one's eyes but his own and God's, and that had been the whole dignity of his life, the unwatched contest, the thing done for its own sake far out where no one could see. Now they watched. The fish buyers came to him with proposals. A man with money, a man who owned 3 boats and had never pulled a line in his life, offered to outfit the old man with a new skiff, a fine one, with good gear and fresh bait every morning, in exchange for a share of what he caught, for the great fisherman would surely catch more great fish, and there was money to be made from a man with such luck and such a name. The newspaper from the town came, and a young man took the old man's photograph standing beside the great white skeleton, which had been kept and mounted on the wall of the terrace as a marvel, and asked him 3 quick questions and wrote down none of the answers fully, and the photograph appeared with words beneath it that called him a hero and got the number of days wrong. When he went down to his skiff now, men came with him. Boys followed him along the shore. When he pushed off in the dark, there were eyes on the water's edge watching the great fisherman go out, and when he came in there were eyes waiting, and whatever he caught, and he caught ordinary fish now, good fish. The fish a good fisherman catches on good days was measured against the great one and found wanting, and the watchers went away a little disappointed and came back the next day to be disappointed again, and the old man felt their disappointment on his back like the sun. He could not go far out anymore. The man who owned the new skiff did not like him to go so far. It was a long way for the boat, and a risk to the investment. And besides, the fish were closer in. The man said, if you knew where to look, and the man did know where to look, because the man thought of the sea as a place that contained a resource, and not as a woman who gave or withheld great favors. So the old man fished closer in better gear, watched by more people for more money and caught more fish, and was, by every measure the village now applied to him, a great success. And the sea, the real sea, the far-out deep water where he had spent the one true night of his life holding the line against his brother under the stars, he did not see again. It was out there. It was always out there, past the line where the new skiff was not supposed to go, and on clear evenings he would stand on the shore among the people who had come to see him and look out at it, the dark blue line of the deep water, and feel it pulling at him the way it always had, and know that he could not go to it, because he was a great fisherman now, and a great fisherman belonged to the village and the buyers and the watchers and the photograph on the wall, and not to himself, and not to the sea. He had gone out that last true morning to change his luck. His luck had changed. That was exactly the trouble. A man whose luck does not change is left alone with it. A man whose luck changes is taken up by everyone who wants a share. And the having of the great fish had cost him the only thing the not having had always left him, which was the freedom to go out alone into the deep and be, for 3 days and 3 nights if it came to that, no one's hero and no one's investment and no one's marvel, only an old man and a great fish and the stars. Chapter 7. The Boy at the Edge. The boy still came, but it was not the same, and both of them knew it was not the same, and neither of them could say so. In the old days, the empty days, the boy had been the old man's whole company and his whole audience and his whole faith. He had come down every evening to the empty skiff and helped with the gear, and they had talked, the long, unhurried talk of two people who have nothing to prove to each other, of baseball and the great DiMaggio and the lions on the beaches of Africa, and the old man had taught the boy everything he knew, and the boy had received it as a son receives it. And in those poor evenings, though neither of them had anything, they had each had the other entirely. Now, when the boy came down to the shore, he had to find the old man among other people. There was always someone with him, a buyer, a reporter, a man with a proposal, a knot of boys who had not cared about Santiago when he was sallow and cared now that he was famous. And Manolin, who had cared the whole time, who had been told the old man was the worst kind of unlucky and had gone on loving him anyway, now had to wait at the edge of the group for a chance to speak to him, and often the chance did not come, and he went home without it. One evening he managed it. The men had gone at last, and the old man was sitting alone by the hauled-out skiff in the dusk, looking out at the dark line of the deep water, and the boy came and sat beside him, the way he used to, and for a while neither of them spoke, and it was almost like before. "Santiago," the boy said, "I wanted to ask you, that day, the big fish, what was it like out there?" And the old man turned to look at the boy, and his eyes, which were still the color of the sea and had been cheerful and undefeated through 84 days of nothing, filled with something the boy had never seen in them before, a kind of gratitude so sharp it was almost pain, because the boy was the first person, in all the weeks since he had brought the fish home, the first and the only one, to ask him what it had been like. "It was 3 days, the old man began. "I had him on the line 3 days and 3 nights, and the first night." "Santiago," a voice called from up the shore. It was the man who owned the new skiff, come back for something, and he came down toward them with another man, talking already about the morning, about the bait, about where they would go and what they expected, and he put his hand on the old man's shoulder in the middle of the old man's sentence, and the old man stopped and turned to the man because the man was speaking to him, and the boy sat beside him in the dusk with the question still open between them, unanswered. And the moment closed over it like water over a sinking thing. The man finished his business and went, but the moment did not come back. It never came back. The old man tried, once or twice on other evenings, to begin the story again, to give the boy the 3 days and the brother in the dark and the stars. But something had been broken in the telling of it that first interrupted evening, and he found he could no longer reach it himself, that the story had been a living thing only while it was unspoken and unsold and his alone, and that now, handled by so many hands, weighed and measured and photographed and priced, it had gone the way of the fish. The meat of it stripped away, until all that was left was the bare shape of the facts. 3 days, a great fish, a famous man, a skeleton on the wall of the terrace. The boy grew. Boys do. And as he grew, he became a good fisherman in his own right and went out in good boats and did well. And he honored the old man always and spoke of him with love, and told people that Santiago had taught him everything, that Santiago had once brought home the greatest fish anyone had ever seen. And it was true, and it was beside the point, and the boy himself half forgot, as the years went by, that there had ever been other evenings, the poor empty evenings on the shore when the two of them had nothing and had each other completely, before the great fish came and made the old man worth everyone's while and worth, in the new arithmetic of the village, just a little less to the one person who had valued him when he was worth nothing at all. Chapter 8: The Deep Water. Santiago lived several more years, and they were comfortable years, the most comfortable of his life, and he was honored in them, and he was never again alone. That was the whole of it in the end. He was never again alone. The man who has been poor and unwatched all his life imagines that being honored and provided for is the cure for his troubles, and Santiago had imagined it too on the empty evenings, that if his luck would only change, if he could only bring home one great fish, everything would be made right. And his luck had changed completely in a single afternoon when the sharks did not come, and he had brought home the greatest fish of all, whole and unbroken, and everything had been made, not right, but loud and provided for and watched, and he had been given in exchange for the one true thing, every false thing a man could want. On clear evenings in those last years, he would walk down to the shore slowly now, for he was very old, and he would stand and look out at the dark blue line of the deep water where he was no longer permitted to go, and he would remember. He did not remember the cheering, or the money, or the photograph, or the skeleton on the terrace wall, which the salt air had yellowed, and which the new young fisherman no longer noticed. He remembered the one night. The long second night, with the great fish towing his skiff slowly out into the open sea, and the cord across his back, and the stars coming out one by one over the whole dark circle of the water, and the great creature in the deep below him, his brother, neither of them willing to let go, the two of them alone together in a world that held no one else. He had not been lonely that night. He had never in his life been less lonely than that night, alone on the sea with the fish that was killing him and that he meant to kill. That was the thing he had lost, not the meat of the fish which the sharks had not taken, everything else. The other story, the true one, the one in which the sharks came and ate the great fish down to the bone, and the old man came home with nothing. That old man had lost a fish and kept his whole life, kept the deep water and the freedom to go out into it, kept the unwatched dignity of the contest, kept the boy, who in that other telling came to him weeping in the morning and swore they would fish together again, and meant it and did. That old man had been destroyed perhaps, but not defeated, and had carried home in the bare white bones a thing no one could take from him because no one had wanted it. Santiago in this telling had not been destroyed. He had won. The sharks had not come. He had brought the great fish home whole, and the village had taken it from him in pieces far more thoroughly than any shark, weighed it and sold it and photographed it and hung its bones on a wall and made him a hero, and a hero is a man whose deeds belong to other people. He had been given everything, and in the giving had lost the one thing that had ever been entirely his, which was the right to go far out, alone, where no one was watching, and match himself against something vast and beautiful and stronger than himself, for no reason and no reward and no one's eyes but God's, and to come home with nothing in his hands and everything in his chest. He died one night in his sleep, in a good bed now, in a mended house, an honored man. The village mourned him properly. There was a notice in the town newspaper that called him a legend and got the number of days wrong again. The great skeleton was taken down from the terrace wall during the morning and could not afterward be found, and no one missed it, and the young fishermen went out in their motorboats to the near water where the fish were if you knew where to look, and did well, and did not think of him. The boy, who was a man now with a boat of his own and sons of his own, stood on the shore the evening after they buried him, where the two of them had sat so many times, and looked out at the dark blue line of the deep water, and tried to remember the old man as he had been, and found to his quiet grief that what came back most clearly was not the great fish, nor the famous years, but a poorer and older memory, half worn away now, of empty evenings on this same shore. When he had been a boy and the old man had been sallow, and they had sat together with nothing in the world, and talked of the lions on the beaches of Africa, and the old man's eyes had been cheerful and undefeated, and neither of them had known then that they already had the only thing worth having, and that it would not survive being given everything else. Far out, past the line where the boats now went, the deep water lay dark and moving under the first stars, indifferent and vast and full of great fish, exactly as it had always been, waiting for a man to come out alone into it with nothing to prove and no one watching, the way the old man had once on the one true night of his life before his luck changed. A What If Classics retelling.